Welcome to Motivate. Today I am joined by our nutritionist and expert Leonora, who is going to be talking about all of the myths, all of the things that we read about, all of the questions that you probably have around prenatal nutrition, and we're really going to get into it today. Focus firstly on the questions we get the most about, which is the first trimester. So we've talked a lot about what we should be eating. It's a really confusing time when you first fall pregnant because you're kind of reading a lot on the internet now, and your advice has changed as well. So like what my mum was told versus what I'm told is very different. And I think one of the main things that mums get scared about is, what should I not eat in my first trimester? Oh my God, what do I need to cut out my diet? I've just found out I'm pregnant. Do I need to do this straight away? And so it'd be so good to hear from you the foods that we should definitely be avoiding and the stuff that's actually just a lot of hearsay.
Yeah. That's a really good question. So when I had my first child, it's like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. I don't want to put my child at risk of anything because I'm not eating properly.
That maternal instinct kicks in straight away, right?
Yeah. And I think instinctively we will develop an aversion to foods that we shouldn't have.
Okay.
For our biological profile. So that's the first thing to keep in mind.
Okay.
Secondly, I think it's important to reduce things like caffeine, so the baby's less able to filter out the caffeine from their system. And I'm caffeine sensitive, so if I've got too much in my digestion, I'm like, oh my God. So imagine, like, I feel like that, like, how is the baby coping? So they have like increased heart rate, increased breathing. So reducing the caffeine, keeping that to 200 micrograms per day. Alcohol, definitely not great. It's so toxic to fetal development. So reducing that. Some people say, well, you can have a glass per night.
I know there's like loose.
There's a lot of that's
controversial.
controversial.
It's very controversial. Yeah. So just cutting it out completely.
I think so, because if you wouldn't give that to your baby physically, then you wouldn't hand your child some wine.
Of course.
Because when I was pregnant, they said, oh, you can have a little bit. But think about it, whatever you have that filters through to the baby, and they're developing brain, nervous system, etc. Does it help? No. Would you give your baby wine or alcohol? No. And I know it's really hard because I love a glass of red wine.
That's the best thing I'm looking for.
I love a glass. So I think if it's controversial around things that can be toxic to the baby, it's just best to eliminate it.
Totally.
So I would say no wine. And then we go on to things like unpasteurized foods.
Yes. Now this is where it gets tricky, right? And this is like, not everybody knows this actually. So when you tell people, they're like, oh my God, like what's pasteurized and what's not?
So pasteurized is when they heat it to get rid of all the bacteria. So it's in essence like a cooked form. Unpasteurized, so that's not cooked. There's no heat being applied to the food, so the bacteria is good. So I say bacteria is good, but the bacteria is present. But if you're having things like fermented foods, that's unpasteurized, and there's a plethora of bacteria there which helps with good gut bacteria. So in some instances, yes, we want to have unpasteurized foods. So when we're pregnant, exposing ourselves to bacteria that could potentially be toxic to the baby, it's not good. So it comes down to reading labels. Really taking your time to read the labels and understand if what you're eating is pasteurized or unpasteurized. And in pregnancy, it's better to just go for pasteurized. So you're reducing your risk of coming into contact with bacteria. And if it doesn't have a label, if it doesn't say, then avoid that. So soft cheeses, pates, sushi, for example, uncooked fish, uncooked meat.
And uncooked meat is stuff like ham, right? Or like cold meats. Does that
I
apply?
would avoid that. I would just err on the side of caution.
Because I didn't realize any of that in my first pregnancy. This is what I mean. And you want to just be cautious, right?
I think needs so.
To put that risk on themselves.
No, and when you look at when you get like food poisoning, for example, God forbid that doesn't happen, but if you potentially get food poisoning, it can, in some cases, be toxic to the baby. So I would say, err on this, especially within the first trimester, err on the side of caution. Just avoid and go for things that you know are fully cooked. Like some people say, well, can I have a medium rare steak? It's just the top of the steak that is exposed to bacteria. But do we really know?
I know.
So I say just avoid anything that's uncooked.
Nobody wants to have food poisoning in pregnancy. You don't want to feel sick. You just want to be healthy, feeling great and healthy.
Avoid poached eggs or raw eggs or anything like that. Make sure your food is cooked properly. Make sure it's fresh. Make sure you've handled it well, washed it thoroughly. And then things that are controversial that are like maybe not.
Got it. Thank you so much for taking part in today's video. And if you enjoyed it, then please do give us a follow on any of our social channels. So you can follow us on Facebook, you can follow us on YouTube, or you can follow us on Instagram, where we are constantly uploading loads of useful content to support you on your wellness journey. See you in your next workout.